It's Tuesday, and that means it's official. Jeremy Plonk, Jeff Siegel with First Bet and Express Bet, our weekly banter and recap show. We've got 5 hot topics for you each and every week. And it's the 1st of August, so you know the heat is on, Jeff. We had heat cancellations last week around the country. Hopefully the weather breaks because we need this week's racing to go down. I mean, we've got the Whitney this weekend with Cody's Wish, the #1 ranked horse in the country. It's West Virginia Derby Day where they drew a field of 14 today for Sunday's big one at Mountaineers. So we want good weather everywhere we go. And, of course, I know out at Del Mar you're always going to get good weather.
It was great last weekend. It was cloudy, so all the heat stayed away. It was just beautiful here. Saratoga can be very volatile, as you know, and I just hope that it's not too hot, and I hope the rain stay away. We had some rain over the weekend that kind of somewhat messed up the form, not too bad, but that's what we live with this time of the year. But some great racing coming up, specifically at Saratoga. Can't wait to see Cody's Wish back in action, and maybe we'll learn something about him, whether or not he can take that brilliance he has in shorter distances and prove that he can be a Breeders' Cup Classic type horse. So we'll see that. Still lots to sort out among the 3-year-olds. That division's still open. So good racing around the country, and it will continue this week.
And I can't wait for the Hambletonian on Saturday as well, the big harness race. I was able to work some fan education events on track at the Meadowlands for the Hambo 3-4 times throughout my career. Really enjoy the on-track experience there. And when you think about big race days, the flow of a harness day is so much different than thoroughbreds. You know, by the time they get back and take the winner's circle photo, the horses for the next race are on the track already. And that day just clips along. You know, when we look at these 6 and 7 hour thoroughbred cards, if you want to get out to a big race experience and really enjoy the pace and the tempo of it, check out the Hambletonian maybe this weekend at the Meadowlands. If you're in the Northeast, should be a great card of action for you at the Big M. All right, let's get our 5 topics on the board here on It's Official, because that's what we do. We're going to start off with a Jim Dandy of a Jim Dandy. It was the big race at Saratoga for the 3-year-olds last weekend. Champion Forte was looking to get back to his winning ways, and he did so, but not without some controversy.
Saudi Crown comes to the quarter pole, leading the way. Forte at the rail. Angel of Empire. Disarm hit show in the center of the track. Less than 3/16 to go. Forte trying to get off the inside to try and run down Saudi Crown. He's in a tight spot. Angel of Empire outside of him. A thriller in the Jim Dandy. It's Saudi Crown digging down deep. The champ Forte's trying to get him on the money, and Angel of Empire. Saudi Crown. Forte. Here's the line. Photo finish. It's a very, very close photo.
It went to Forte, but not before it went to the steward's booth for review, Jeff. A roughly run race from the top of the stretch all the way to the final strides of the race. Let's take a look at the head-on and get your thoughts on what was a pretty tough call for the stewards, what to do here in the Jim Dandy. As we pick up the head-on here from the head-on replay, you're going to see Forte in the orange down on the inside. Irad Ortiz going to start to work his way out on Flavian Pratt and Angel of Empire.
And you can see Saudi Crown drifting out and maybe causing some of that hurting. Then he's going to drop down, and now Forte is going to come over and brush him right at the shadow of the wire. I actually thought right there, you see how the hind end of the leader got knocked from underneath him? And that I thought was Forte's fault. And when they called the inquiry, I actually thought that was what they were looking at. Turns out it wasn't enough. I'm not sure. When I first saw the head on, I thought, oh, it's got to come down. Right. And after a while, I realized, Saudi Crown everybody seemed to cause problems there, except for Angel of Empire, who was fourth. So I'm not upset at all that they left it up. I mean, I'm generally, especially in big races, unless it's really egregious, I want the winner who got the wire first to get the win. Yeah. And you could make a case one way or the other, and I wouldn't argue with you, but I'm glad they kept it up because I thought Forte actually earned that win. And he showed me something. I mean, he's always showed me something. And he's back. I don't think the blinkers helped in any way or hurt him anyway. He's the same horse I've always seen. But that was a good win. And now he's got another big win on his resume, and that might come in handy come Eclipse Award time.
He does have the head-to-head victory over, Mage, the Kentucky Derby winner, when they ran 1-2 in the Florida Derby. He ran him down. So the Kentucky Derby is going to carry a little extra weight for Mage at this point, but the head-to-head matchup gives Forte the edge in that particular one. Of course, they didn't match up in the Preakness. Forte went on to hit the board in the Belmont where Mage was sitting it out. Now we've seen Mage come back and run a good second in the Haskell. They all get to prove it on the racetrack, hopefully, in the big one, the Travers Stakes coming up at the end of the month at Saratoga. So hopefully we will see them there. As for the controversy and the angst on social media, that's social media, right? If there's not angst, it wouldn't be social media. The one interesting thing I thought about whether the horse would come down or not was, we talked about this in this space last week. Mike Rapoli, the owner, kind of putting his ultimatum out there that if things don't start going the way he wants them to be in the next 3 years, he's going to dissolve his stable and get out of horse racing and that sort of deal. Now, the very next race in a big profile situation, his number's blinking on the tote board. It's a bad look, right? I mean, just kind of one of those where, do they want to take Rapoli down? Do they not? Are they even considering anything like that? Who knows what's in the minds of the stewards? But certainly in the public, and the perception starts to be, it's almost like a referee getting worked over by a coach, right? You kind of work them over because you want that next call. And did Rapoli get a little fairer shake in his direction because of his threats and because of his, cloudy comments? Who knows? I mean, it's human nature. We see referees get worked over, and next thing you know, the flag's out or the whistle's blown on the next time down the court after a coach goes after them. So I don't know if it was gamesmanship, if it had anything to do with it, but certainly perception is part of reality. And the perception would be that, Rapoli got his way in this particular instance, certainly after the Kentucky Derby did not go his way from the stewards or the veterinary group there, the Kentucky Racing Commission side of things. Different group of people, different adjudicating bodies here, but one against Rapoli, now one for Rapoli in this particular situation. But as for Forte, the horse, Jeff, I agree. I thought it was a really good performance by him, and this is what we wanted to see from him, coming back. And it was only 4 rivals, but there were 4 pretty good rivals in there. And, to get by Angel of Empire the tough way that he did, and then run down a loose leading Saudi Crown. I mean, there was no excuse for that runner who had everything his way on the front end.
Right. I mean, he was handed the lead, and I'm not so sure that race doesn't flatter Saudi Crown, whereas Forte had to show some real grit to get up and wear down a loose on the lead, very good colt, by the way, in Saudi Crown. But it really sets it up now for the Travers. I think even though Forte might be the leader now in terms of the resume, he's still going to have to go out and do it in the Travers, and we'll see what happens with Arcangelo and a few others maybe in there that will make it more challenging. So again, I'm looking forward to that weekend. I think it's the last Saturday of the month, and we'll see if Forte can solidify his lead in the division. He really is a high quality colt for sure, and he will get his chance to prove what he didn't have a chance to prove in Kentucky. He can do it at 1.25 miles in the Travers.
Yeah, barring a Breeders' Cup Classic win by one of the 3-year-olds, it could be winner take all in the Travers, with Arcangelo trying to get that second big one, Mage trying to get a second big one, and for Forte to try to get a second Grade 1 after winning the Florida Derby earlier in the year. We talked about it. What was it? 10 Grade 1 so far for the 3-year-olds in the division, and 10 different winners. So somebody's got to double down at some point. Let's go to our second topic on the board this week. Faster, fastest. We talked about it was going to be a big weekend for the sprinters around the country, and they performed up to snuff, from a very good performance to a better performance to a great performance. Let's start off with the fast one. It was the Bing Crosby and the Chosen Vron, the Calbred, getting the hard-fought victory.
Now here comes Dr. Skyville, and Dr. Skyville, blue blinkers on the outsiders, coming fast at them now. Kid Corleone running a big one down at the rail, then CZ Rocket trying to come home gamely as well. They are homeward bound, Dr. Skyville. Anarchist has come to take him on. The Chosen Vron is in there as well with a white cap. 3 of them nose and nose to the wire. The Chosen Vron has won it again.
I know we talked in our handicapping podcast on Fridays, Jeff, that a lot of horses had a chance and a license to win this race. And you had mentioned the Chosen Vron. You said this is a Calbred who takes a backseat to no one. Now in open company, he's Breeders' Cup bound. Your thoughts on the Chosen Vron?
And he's got the win and you're in money, but he's not eligible. So they're going to have to put up $100,000, which is a lot of money for a gelding. But they're going to do it apparently. And I would love to see him here at Santa Anita to perform. Where he is exceptional. He's exceptional anywhere now. That was his 8th consecutive win. He's won races by a neck, a nose. This race was by a head. You talk about knowing where the wire is and having that reserve energy in the last 50 yards when you really need it. He doesn't wave any white flag. He says, you come and beat me.
Yeah.
And the Chosen Ron now has won 13 out of 17 starts. Miraculous. Most of the wins have been against Cowbird Company, but he's won open graded stakes, and this was obviously a grade 1. I do think, however, he was aided by the fact that Dr. Schivel was not in the race, apparently. I don't know who this Dr. Schweivel was or whatever. But someone tell
We're going to give Trevor a mulligan. He's
all right,
we'll give him
Dr. Schivel, who was actually the favorite. And he did the same thing in this race, if you remember, that he did in the Breeders' Cup Sprint 2 years ago. He makes this huge run. Looks like he's going to continue on. Yeah. And then in the last 50 yards, he hits the brakes. He's kind of like the opposite of the Chosen Ron. In this case, Dr. Schivel finished third. And I think you got to realize that this horse, as good as he is, his run is not that long. You've got to time it. You've got to be able to wait as long and be patient as long as you can. Eddie Delahousie would have probably never lost a race on the course. He'd wait forever. He used to wait forever.
Yeah.
He finishes third. Anarchist, who was a very, very good second at Belmont in his last start behind Elite Power, he kind of franks that for him. The buyer number came up in the mid-90s, and I think that doesn't do it justice. All of these horses are capable of triple-digit buyers, including the winner. And I don't know if he's going to be trained up now to the Breeders' Cup, whether he'll run during the fall meeting at Santa Anita, but he is going to be a very popular horse. A lot of ones next to his name, and I think that the Chosen Run, who I think it might be just as good on the grass, actually, as he is on the dirt. But apparently this is a race he's going to go in and then he'll make a very good storyline for those who want to cover the sport, because the Chosen Ron, very popular here in California for obvious reasons.
Chosen Ron, winner in a fast time that we saw in the Bing Crosby, but the next fastest race that we want to talk about was the aforementioned Elite Power. He was going for, 7-8 wins in a row. Trainer Bill Mott, if you watched the Fox broadcast, was a little sheepish on how he might handle the off track in the pre-race interview with Maggie Wolfendale. He wasn't really sounding too confident, but mid-stretch, I think it all changed, and it was the birthday for Bill Mott. So why would he possibly be worrying? He always wins on his birthday at Saratoga. Here's Elite Power's victory in the Alfred Vanderbilt.
Far outside, Elite Power is starting to close. They're a furlong from the finish. Gunite, Elite Power kicks it into high gear. Dean delivers, drops back. They're coming to the 16th pole, and it's Gunite trying to fend off Elite Power, who's motoring like a big chestnut tank on the outside. And Elite Power and Gunite, Elite Power got him right on the money.
Good right now, Jeff. I love closing sprinters. I always have. You kind of go back to Nakatani and Janine Sahadi in the Breeders' Cup in the mid-90s. They had those late rallying types. I love those kind of horses. If they can give away some ground and keep their momentum, without having to break their momentum on the outside, it's just a matter if they can get there in time. And for Elite Power, he's got the measure, and he ran down a good one. Goodnight brought his game.
Remember last week, I was afraid Goodnight was going to beat him. When I say afraid, I love Goodnight. I'm not, it wouldn't upset me if he won.
Right.
But Elite Power is the champion. I thought this was surely going to test him. And one of the reasons why I thought that would happen is because Goodnight actually has a little bit more tactical speed, which means Elite Power is going to be tasked with the chance of having to wear down a very good horse, which he did. And that's Elite Power in a nutshell. 5-year-old son of Curlin, very much like Cody's Wish in a sense, where you always kind of wonder, maybe he would be better going long. I don't know how much better he could be, champion as he is. The last time he ran a mile was in June of 22, and all he did was win that race by 3.5 and ran a mile and 34 flat. So I have a hunch he could route if he wanted to, but that's up a good thing here. These two will probably meet again, I'm sure, if not only in the Breeders' Cup, but there's a race at Saratoga coming up later in the meeting that we'll see them run. And I would think that the Forego will be another great race. Right. I think it's 7/8 that day. So these two will meet. And they were 6 clear of everybody else. Yeah. Everybody else has no shot against these two horses. They're just so far.
Not right now.
Yeah. So, but one of my favorite horses for sure. Now 8 out of 11. Somehow this Elite Power managed to get beat in his first 3 races. I don't know how that happened. He's won 8 since then. Some of them he's won by himself. Some of them he had to work harder. and beating Gunite, who could easily be considered the second best sprinter in the country right now. Now he's 0 for 2 against Elite Power. He'll try to get closer next time, and I'll be watching. It's going to be another great race coming up in the Forego.
And we'll see if anybody does anything between Saratoga and the Breeders' Cup. That long layoff, especially for the faster types, the sprinters, that longer break probably from Saratoga up to the Breeders' Cup probably does not necessitate another prep. But there'll be races in New York and California at Keeneland for the sprinters leading up to the Breeders' Cup. We'll see who shows up there to maybe fill out the field. So we had the impressive Bing Crosby. We had the really impressive performance there in the Vanderbilt. You also had the DeFrancis Dash where Lightning Larry got the victory, hard-fought win there. So it was a great weekend for the sprinters. But we haven't talked about the fastest one yet, which is a real surprise because it came the next day in the Amsterdam for 3-year-old sprinters. And maybe we've got a newcomer to the division that we really want to watch come Breeders' Cup time. It's New York Thunder.
43-2 for the half. These two have pulled well clear of Deer District on the inside of Rivet. They're at the top of the stretch, and New York Thunder means business. Opens up 2.5. Drew's Gold made that big bid, but is now 3 lengths behind New York Thunder, turning in a powerful performance in the Amsterdam. New York Thunder rallies to win by 7.
That was the fastest of all. If you look at the speed figures, the clock, and things that go along with it, I got to tell you, this came out of left field for me. I did not know New York Thunder had this kind of game. Absolutely impressive. Every once in a while, we see these kind of performances at Saratoga. This was another one true to that stardom.
I had watched his race at Woodbine back in April, and he looked like unbelievably good that day. But it was all-weather, listed stakes, 3-year-olds. That doesn't really tell you a whole lot. He was supposed to run, was it the Woody Stevens? Or I can't remember, but he was scratched out of another race since then.
Right.
Had a foot bruise, yeah. But he came back here, and it kind of helped that Rivet didn't break. He would have been part of that pace. But once New York Thunder was able to clear from the outside, he just ran everybody else into the ground. This is not some flash in the pan. This is an undefeated 3-year-old colt by Nyquist, who's won his races by 6 1/4, 1 3/4, 7.5, and 7.5 again. So it's not like, hey, maybe we should start thinking about this colt. The one thing he does, he doesn't switch leads. He didn't switch leads until deep stretch here. I don't think he can pull that stunt against Elite Power in that group when eventually he faces them. But he's not going to have to worry about them until the Breeders' Cup, because first things first, and with the Jerkins coming up, an Arabian Lion coming in, that's going to be must-see TV. I can tell you that. A very, very fast colt against Baffert's colt, who who's not going to run until then. He'll be fresh, but we saw what he did in New York last time out. Whew, that's salty. So New York Thunder, 110 buyer, and his previous top was 97, so he made a 13-point jump there. I don't know if he's got any more improvement in him, but if he does, now all of a sudden he's got to be taken really seriously if you haven't already done so.
Well, if you subscribe to the numbers, you don't have to get much faster than that. I mean, 110 is going to win just about every race out there. We'll see if it wins August 26th in the Jerkins, as you mentioned, part of the Travers undercard at Saratoga. A lot of great sprints last week. Let's stay with the sprint theme, and we're going to talk about the filly and mare sprinters next as we go back to the board. Wake up, Goodnight Olive. She wasn't racing last week, but another filly in the filly and mare sprint division was. And Echo Zulu looked like she could be the heir apparent to Goodnight Olive as the champ in this division. Let's go back and look at Echo Zulu's win in the honorable miss last weekend at the Spa, and we'll discuss, can she challenge Goodnight Olive?
Echo Zulu hugs the rail and goes on strongly, 44-2, putting away Frank's Rocket. Dr. B in the center trying to get into second. They come to the 16th pole, and it's a sizzling performance for Echo Zulu. What an effort. Echo Zulu canters in by 8 widening lengths. Dr. B second, Frank's Rocket third in 108.76 seconds.
sometimes when they try to get a filly or a colt as a 3-year-old to stretch out towards the classics, it doesn't work when they try to turn them back. Echo Zulu, they tried to make an Oaks filly out of. She ran respectively on the trail to get to the Kentucky Oaks and through. But since they've turned her back to a sprinter and now at age 4, this is what she was meant to do. She looked absolutely dominant in the Honorable Miss. And to me, I don't think there's a better filly and mare sprinter in the country right now than her.
Well, according to the Bayer numbers, she earned a 112. That actually was the fastest number of all of them, including the boys.
Right.
So I mean, that's how fast she was. She made a mistake as a 2-year-old. She won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies around 2 turns. Oh, she's a router. No, she's not.
Right.
I mean, and she can win a race like that because she's so much better. But when their fillies kind of grow up a little bit, now it's a little bit more difficult. And I think now they figured out, okay, let's just let her be what she wants to be,
right.
A sprinter. Now, if you remember in the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint at Keeneland, she was beaten by Goodnight Olive, but she had the 14 hole that day. And I think they tried to rate her a little bit for some reason, maybe drop in, and they didn't want to get caught wide. And whatever the case was, didn't even break that well. And she ran well, but you've got to let her roll. You got to, this is her weapon.
Right.
You got to bust out there and go. And although Goodnight Olive did beat her, I'm not sure that that's going to happen ever again.
Yeah.
Goodnight Olive's had 3 starts this year, 2 wins, 1 troubled second. She should, by all rights, be undefeated. But she's had to make hard work of it. And Echo Zulu, now in her 2 starts, she's blowing everybody out of the water. She won the winning colors by almost 6. She won this race by 7. She's faster on numbers than anything Goodnight Olive has ever done. So when you tell me that you think Echo Zulu's better now, I am in total agreement, Jeremy. What I just saw, I mean, that is pretty awesome to me. And now what becomes of her and what Asmussen will do with her, remains to be seen. But obviously, out here in California, it's going to be the only maybe difference there would be this race out here is 7/8. But that's not going to make a difference if Echo Zulu runs like this.
Echo Zulu obviously has the tactical advantage. She's faster out of the gate and gets into a race. So in a bigger field size in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint, if we get to that point, I think she'd have the edge as far as getting in front of her. For Goodnight Olive, like you said, she's had 3 races this year. So there's a pretty good measuring stick already and a form cycle to evaluate. She had a win by a length at Keeneland. Wasn't that impressive? A win by a neck also in Stakes Company. So her 2 wins are by a length and a quarter combined. Last year in her 6-race win streak, all of her wins were like 2.5 lengths or more. And the Breeders' Cup was the race. It was 2.5 lengths. I mean, she was thorough in her victories. She's been workmanlike in her victories, 2 wins this year. And then, of course, she had the 2-length defeat when she was troubled in the Derby City Distaff on the Kentucky Derby undercard there at Churchill when she was hemmed in the whole way. But she got beat 2 lengths that day. So net margin, she's actually in the hole this year. She's won by a length and a quarter. She's lost by 2 in her 3 starts. That's not going to add up with the way we're seeing right now with Echo Zulu. I think Echo Zulu has taken over that division. If Goodnight Olive is to get back and defend her title, she'll need to wake up, as you said in the headline, sir.
Yeah, well, they could hook up before then. I mean, there's the Ballerina $500,000 event on, August 26th. Like, why don't they just move the Breeders' Cup to August 26th at Saratoga? They could meet there. I'm not sure. I know that Goodnight Olive is certainly training for that. She breathed the other day, so she's fine. Whether or not Steve wants to run Echo Zulu back or not, I would imagine that with that kind of money, you probably would. So that's just another incredible race that is scheduled for that day. And I hope they both take each other up, and then we'll find out who the best filly is, at least in the summer anyway.
Yeah, you got Thoroughbred Club of America Stakes at Keeneland in October, the first weekend of October, towards the Breeders' Cup, which is a race very much on the path of the top horses for the Filly Mare Sprint Division every year. So you have that. If you don't want to match up at Saratoga, you could wait about 5-6 weeks until you get to the first week of October there at Keeneland. Okay, let's keep talking in the Breeders' Cup divisions, but we're going in our Breeders' Cup tracker next to the Turf Division. We've got 2 races in the Breeders' Cup Turf, one overseas in the King George at Ascot, and here at Saratoga, where last year's Breeders' Cup champion Rebels Romance was back in action last week in the Bowling Green. Let's start going overseas first, and in the Shadwell colors in the blue and white cap, be looking on the outside for Hookham.
Now with Bolshoi Ballet, Luxembourg getting a dream run round the inside. Pile Driver swinging wide, peeling wider Westover. Then Hookham, King of Steel looking for a run on the far side and now getting through between Luxembourg and Pile Driver as Westover launches a challenge. It's Westover that goes on. Hookham down the outside and the 3-year-old King of Steel. Westover just wobbling a little in front. King of Steel far side. Hookham on the near side. Westover and Hookham, the older horses, fighting it out inside the final furlong, and it's Hookham that's just in front. Westover is fighting back. They race up towards the line. Hookham a nose in front from Westover, and Hookham wins. Hookham wins the King George.
The King George was a matchup of the 3-year-olds taking on the olders. August Rodin, the horse who won the Irish and Epsom Derbies, was expected to be the headliner in there, but as the race caller told you, it was the older horses who had it out in the end. Jeff, your takeaway from this win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Turf.
This horse is good. I don't think he gets the headline so much because he is 6 years old, but he's only had 17 starts, not like he's over raced. He's got 11 wins. He's 2 for 2 this year. How about having won 5 out of his last 6 and top class company? So Hookham wins this. Obviously, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Turf. Love to see him out here. Obviously, there's the consideration now for the ARC, but that doesn't mean they couldn't run them both. And that was just a terrific win by again, one of my favorite horses and one of the great horses of the last 25 years, See the Stars, who was just for absolutely top class over there. Maybe just a hair below Frankel, but still a great racehorse and a great stallion. So he wins that. I don't know what the heck happened to the dual Derby winner. He just didn't pick up his feet and was virtually eased in the last quarter of a mile. August Rodin, but Aidan O'Brien said he was fine the next day. I don't know what definition of fine he's using because that horse should have been right there. He was a favorite and he couldn't even make the course. So I don't know what happened there, but again, Hookham, again, another one of these Euros that if they were to take up the challenge of coming over here and with the win and you're in, it kind of makes it pretty enticing. I'd love to see him out here. He's fabulous. He really is.
And one of the reasons a European would want to come for the Breeders' Cup Turf, other than what the $5 million purse, $4 million purse for the Breeders' Cup Turf, huge money on the line. But the American competition just isn't that great. And when we see Channel Maker at age 9 getting to the winner's circle this past weekend at Saratoga in the Bowling Green, that kind of underscores things. As we go back and take a look at this race from the Spa on the turf, we're going to pick it up midway on the turn because the defending Breeders' Cup champion, Rebels Romance, it's going to be the 9 horse in here, about 5th or 6th on the turn. It's going to run into some trouble and end up losing the rider.
They round the turn. Channel Maker, Tawny Port, Daunt on the outside of them. At the rail, Verstappen coming under some pressure now. Looking for room is Rebels Romance in between rivals, just losing the rider there. Number 9, Rebels Romance lost the rider at the quarter pole, and they're at the top of the stretch. And it's Channel Maker. Verstappen comes out to chase in the center of the course. Never Explain is finishing nicely. Never Explain coming to Channel Maker. Channel Maker digging in. Never Explain. Verstappen is in between them. Channel Maker keeps on going, and it's going to be Channel Maker. Channel Maker takes him all the way to win the Bowling Green.
So Channel Maker up front, he avoids all the trouble, and he kind of has a flashback to some of his best old form, but he can't be that good, can he?
No, I think he finished off the board in his last, I think, 7 starts or something. And at age 9, Bill Mott throwing him in there he was 20-1 on the morning line just because what am I going to do with him? And he'd won the race before. So he got loose in the lead, which is basically how he has to win his races now. And when Rebels Romance clipped heels, lost the rider, and I'd watched him during the running, and Mullen had never, ever even asked him at any stage. He was just sitting there and waiting, and then he was going to blow by them just like he did in the Breeders' Cup. Never had that chance when he got clipped heels and fell, which was really unfortunate. But the good news is that Rebels Romance, the horse, is fine. So much so, he's supposed to run back not this weekend, but the following weekend in the Arlington Million at Colonial. So you'll get a chance to do that. Channel Maker is what he is. He's so thoroughly admirable. I mean, how many horses? I don't care if you're a gelding or a colt. This was his 54th career start, 10 wins, and earnings close to $4 million. And but as I understand it now, he's 9. He can't even run at Saratoga next year. I think they kind of write him out because he's 10. Have you heard that? I think so.
I have not, but I'd have to see in the condition book on something like that.
I think when they get to 10, they tell you enough is enough. So I don't know. I'll check that out. But in the meantime, you're right about this group. This is the Breeders' Cup winner from last year. And even if he had won this race, I don't think anybody would not run in the Breeders' Cup next year or this year because he would be in it. They wouldn't be afraid of him or anything like that. So, but Channelmaker, good for him. Good for Bill Mott. Just a thoroughly admirable racehorse who is still winning group races at age 9. And that doesn't happen very often.
Reminds me of an old handicapping conspiracy theory from my youth. Used to be in the day they couldn't run maidens over the age of 5. So my dad and I, like every December, would be betting every 5-year-old maiden on the planet that we could find. It wasn't the simulcast era back then, but if we were at Pimlico or we were at Laurel that time of year, or even Bowie in the winter, or Penn National or Charlestown, wherever we were on track, we were looking for 5-year-old maidens in late December because otherwise they had to be shipped off the track at that point. So we used to think they were going to put one over at the end of the calendar year to keep them in circulation. But old handicapping theories, they die hard, Jeff. I'm going to stand by that one and say it was in the 1980s.
I'll tell you a funny one that I grew up on. And of course, when you go to the racetrack, everything is new. You believe everything. So there used to be a belief or a system or a method or an automatic play where if Shoemaker was in the last race, he only had eighth race, you bet on because he wouldn't be hanging around. He wanted, beat the traffic. So he would not be running the eighth race. But if he was riding it, then obviously the horse is going to win. Otherwise, why would Shoe hang around? And then I learned that just because a race is an 8 in the book, and they don't even know what race it's going to be until they draw it. They can move them around. So that kind of blew that theory out. You think Shoemaker knew what race was going to be the 8th race? Oh, that's going to be the 8th race, so I'm not going to ride him. No, they didn't. That could have been the 3rd in the book for all anybody knew. So anyway.
And the agent's throwing him on the horse in the at the draw, right? So they find out after the fact.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many of those. You can write a book on those, And then people will still believe them anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just got to be bullheaded and believe it, even if there's nothing to it. We've talked a lot of Breeders' Cup divisions so far. As we get to our Stars of Tomorrow, our cemented 5th topic each edition of this It's Official podcast, we're looking at perhaps the Breeders' Cup juvenile or juvenile fillies of horses to look forward to in the coming weeks. We had one at Del Mar over the weekend, the Bob Baffert trained Heartland, that you want to keep your eye on.
Heartland trying to get involved now. Heartland at the rail, still 5 back. They come for home now. A day to remember on the outside and Slider. Heartlanders coming gamely. Heartlanders finishing stoutly along the inside. And Heartland strikes the front. Heartland and Juan Hernandez from far back to win going away. Slider second. A day to remember finished up 3rd.
Wanted you to see the gallop out of that one for Heartland. A really impressive career debut. Jeff, a lot of times when you see a closer come from behind in a 2-year-old race like that, it's kind of a melee finish. This field was spread eagled, and the winner came from off the pace. So that's kind of like a double plus.
Well, first of all, it was only 5/8. So usually you're not going to come from that far back anyway. Right. He broke okay from the rail, and then he got intimidated when some of the horses came over. And he kind of put the brakes on it, lost his action. So that kind of finished him. At least that's what we thought. Then he's trying to rally along the inside, which is this deep, as you know, at Del Mar, the worst place to try to run it on. And yet he went by 2 colts that I know are very well regarded. And wins going away, runs 103 in small change and gallops out way in front. Yet another one of these 2-year-olds by Justify who is now just becoming the stallion in America. I mean, he's been so hot. The last month or so, he's come out with so many, not only older horses, but 2-year-olds. The one in Europe that's so good that we talked about last week. And this colt, big, rangy colt, the $575,000 yearling. A lot of these hotshot Baffert horses are products of the 2-year-old in training sale, when you can watch them move and they go on, and you can pretty much figure out they can run. You buy them as a yearling, it's a little bit more of a crapshoot. But if you look at this colt, the strength and size that he has for Windstar and their partners, it's really easy to see how good he could be. And we had works on him on XPTV. Then you watch the works and you say, okay, nobody's beating this horse. If he doesn't jump the fence, he's going to win. And he almost did down the back. But he still won anyway. Just another, and you know what? I hate to bring this up because it's kind of snotty, nasty, but I'll say it anyway because it's a joke, and I don't mean it anything else like that. But now they're lining up to see who's going to train this colt for the Derby next year. Because that's a low blow. That's 15 yards. A personal foul, 15 yards.
Unnecessary roughness in July.
Exactly right.
That's
targeting. You're out of the game. All right, but that's again, you got to start thinking about that again, just like we did last year,
right?
Because this colt, based on the fact that his sire was a Triple Crown winner, and the way he looks, the way he runs, the way he trains, everything about him is, if he stays sound, it's almost impossible to not consider what he might be 3, 4, 6 months down the road from now.
The name Heartland, one of my favorite George Strait songs, by the way. And that's a perfect segue because, Jeff, as we get to our bonus topic this week on It's Official, over the past 2 weekends out at Del Mar 2 weeks ago, and then over this past weekend at Saratoga, the Permanently Disabled Jockey Fund had its annual karaoke jockey challenge, where the jockeys and some of their spouses get behind the mic and sing for charity to raise money for other riders. And it's a really fun event that's picked up a nice following in the clubs where it takes place, and a following on social media. I want to ask you, do you know, Jeff, the song that spent 14 weeks on the Hot 100, #1 this week on the country charts, Morgan Wallen's Last Night? Are you familiar with the song?
No. I am not.
Jose Ortiz is going to give you his version of that. And this was the winner, folks. This was the winning karaoke challenge. Last Night, Jose Ortiz, the song Last Night from a couple nights ago at Saratoga. That was the winner. So I'm telling you, the competition wasn't that strong in Saratoga this year. I mean, because we've seen some good ones, Backstreet Boys over the years, and some of the others who have done some really knockout performances. That one got the trophy when Tom Durkin announced the winner. Jose Ortiz. So he winning races on the track at the Spa, and he won the karaoke competition. But the West Coast, Jeff, if you're thinking Southern California, that's got to be where the musical talent is, right? I mean, you would think, Hollywood, the music scene, it's got to be better at Del Mar than it was at Saratoga, right?
I would think so. But if you're asking me whether I recognize a song or not, you have to understand that if it was recorded post 1985, I'm out the window, so I wouldn't know.
You're in luck then, my friend, because you didn't know any of the stuff was coming on the show. This song you will know, and this was the Del Mar winner. But did you ever hear like a bowling team or something like that where you have a ringer, somebody who's like really, like it's like the Industrial League bowling team, and some guy who doesn't even work at the factories on the bowling team?
Sure.
Adrian Escobedo has one mount at Del Mar this year, but somehow he got in the Jockeys Challenge for karaoke, and he lit it up with La Bamba. Listen to this one on the West Coast. Really much better than Ortiz.
bad.
That is a ringer compared
I
to
mean,
what
that
we
guy,
saw with Ortiz.
that guy's 6'1", though. That guy is 6'1". Well, he's no jockey, is he? You know.
They said he was a jockey. I looked up the stats. He's got one mount at the meet. Adrian Escobedo, the ringer who won the permanently disabled Jockey Fund Karaoke Challenge on the West Coast. And I give him the edge over Ortiz. If I'm voting, as our good friend Tom Quigley likes to say, #West is best. Yeah. I think West is best in this particular set.
Maybe he just got the mount so he could be eligible for this thing. I don't know.
That might have been. That might have been the way they pulled it off. Not to look at our topics this week on It's Official. Our 5 on the board are complete now, including our bonus topic. It was a Jim Dandy of a Jim Dandy with Forte winning. Controversial finish, but Jeff and I both think the horse should have stayed up. Fast, faster, fastest. We saw 3 tremendous sprint races this weekend, from the Bing Crosby to the Vanderbilt to New York Thunder stealing the show in the Amsterdam for the 3-year-olds. We talk sprinters in the filly and mare sprint division as wake up, good night, Olive, because you have competition now in Echo Zulu, who looks like the head of the division. Our Breeders' Cup tracker went to the Turf division for the Breeders' Cup Turf Win and You're In. King George and Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup out at Ascot. It was won by who was the international winner in that one? Hookham got the victory there. And then, of course, it was Channel Maker, the 9-year-old, getting the victory in the Bowling Green. And our star of tomorrow, Heartland, for trainer Bob Baffert, a dominant winner at Del Mar back in the first race on July the 30th. That wraps it up. Lucky for you, Jeff and I will not sing on this broadcast, but I don't know. I mean, I think we could have competed with the Saratoga Jocks.
Well, I could sing at one time. Back in the 60s, I had a rock band then. That was yesterday, and yesterday's gone, as Peter and Gordon would have told you. Anyway, good racing this week again. As always, we'll have all of it covered back on Friday in our first call show, and we'll look at some of the key races, and we will have plenty to choose from. It's just a terrific weekend coming up. All of the weekends will be great until the end of the Del Mar and Saratoga meetings, and then we'll get ready for the fall. But hopefully we'll pick some winners, make some money, and everybody will go home with some cash to spend.
Hambletonian on Saturday. You'll get Al Samaglia's video analysis in our podcast on Friday, and you'll be able to check that out on social media as well. So if you like to follow the harness. And as we mentioned, drawn right before we came on the air to record, 14 in the West Virginia Derby. Names you might remember: Lord Miles, Red Route 1, and Raise Cane. Some of the horses, the veteran of the Triple Crown Series and Trail, are back in the West Virginia Derby with a field of 14. They're going to run a night card on Sunday for the West Virginia Derby this year. On behalf of everybody with First Bet and First Technologies and my partner, Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great day, and we will talk to you on Friday on the First Call Podcast.